Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Founders from This Way Games. Founders is a strategic deduction game in which players are trying to get as many points as possible by accomplishing their specific goals. They're going to have specific goals, we'll talk more about those soon, but you share goals with other players. You also try to be mindful of the things that the other players are doing in order to try to deny them as many points as possible while gathering as many points for you and your team as you possibly can. That wasn't a lot of actual rules, so much as concept, but we'll go ahead and get into that. But first, this is a prototype. Everything you see here is a prototype. Rules and components subject to change. There are certain pieces missing from this prototype, some small tokens that aren't, well, there are things missing. This is a prototype. It's all good. Let's go ahead and dive into it. But with that, this is a 2 to 5 player game in which you're trying to accomplish your own private goals. There's a 2-player mode. There's a board extension for 5 players. This might be part of the expansion. I have to double check that. The expansion adds some more things. I'm primarily reviewing the base game over here. But in the game, you're going to have a specific goal. For example, you can see over here that this is a yellow goal. This player over here is working towards trying to get yellow colors in a certain pattern. We'll talk more about that. I know the card looks blue, but that's the blue background. The yellow is the thing you're paying attention to, because on this side, this one over here is a blue goal. The way that works is you're going to have a color card that goes in between a goal card, and the combination of the color and the goal defines what you're trying to do. These are actually very clever cards in the way they're done over here with the little see-through. But either way, let's talk more about this card. So this card over here, you're trying to get spiraling centers out from the center. So for example, if we place this down over here, like so, that's a yellow token over there that goes in that moving away from the center pattern. Similarly, if we place this over here like so, let's see if we place it like that, there we go. That's another yellow and a yellow spiraling out from the direct center. So any yellow here, 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 or here, 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 or here, and onwards around the thing would be worth 1 point each for this goal. On this side over here, this blue goal wants to get blue tokens in the zones, in the intermediary zones over here from each player. So for example, this over here would count as a blue towards that goal because that section of blue is 1 point within that goal range. And the way this one operates, whenever you have a card that has not all around sides, you can actually rotate this however you want to score optimally. So at the end of the game, you can say these two are the most efficient, or maybe these two are the most efficient, but you're trying to ultimately get things. So for example, right now, if I went ahead and placed this like this over here, then over here by doing this, let's go and move this back over here. When we do it like this, we can say, you know what? Right now, this section is worth 1 point if I did these two, but if I do these two, that's worth 2 points, so we're going to choose these two. So you can optimally choose how these things are going to score. That's the idea of your private goals. The key thing, though, is these are private. What you're doing on your turn, you're trying to score as many points for these. We'll come back to the point scoring. It'll make sense soon enough. But what you're trying to do is, in the game, on your turn, you're going to take a tile. You're going to take a tile from in front of another player, not yourself. So you can reach over here, you can grab one of these tiles, and you can choose where to place it down. Now, being this player over here, I'm trying to be mindful of what makes the most sense for me to try to get in order to get as many points as possible. So, for example, placing this over here like so will potentially get me 2 points once I'm vying for this goal. The tricky part is you have to be mindful of the fact that other players, if they can figure out what you're going for, they can start trying to get in your way. They can start placing pieces that fulfill their own goals while getting in the way of yours. So you do not have to figure out somebody else, but if you do figure them out, there's a degree of deduction, there's a degree of trying to get in their way as you do so, which is useful. And then additionally, you're operating with a teammate. Effectively, there's going to be another player at the table who has a blue goal. There are 5 colors in play. There's a kind of annoying setup mechanism to ensure that everyone has the colors in play, that everyone has one of each of the 3 colors. It works. It's a little annoying, but it works. But past that, right now at this table, there are 3 colors in play. We know that one of the colors is yellow because we have a yellow goal. We know that one of the colors is blue because we have a blue goal. We don't know what the other color is, but it's one of the other 3 colors is in play. But from these goals over here, I'm going to share one of these goals with one of these players, and one of these goals with the other. But I don't necessarily know which one, and if you can figure that out, you're at an advantage. At higher player counts, that becomes even more important to figure out. The more players there are at the table, the more important it is to figure out who's on your team. Because at the end of the game, you're going to score points based on the lower of both your goals. So let's go ahead right about now and figure out who actually has the other blue goal. This is going to be a parchment, which means this one is probably the blue goal. Here we go. Here's the blue goal. This one scores for adjacent. These actually pair up nicely, by the way. This one scores for having blues touching each other in the pattern, and these score for having blues in specific sections. So what you're trying to do, and there's 2 points for each one touching around there. But what you're going to do over here is you're trying to be mindful of each of the goals in play and help each of you achieve achieve those goals, because let's say at the end of the game this scores, I don't know, 12 points, and then the game this scores 14 points, then you're going to score 12 points for that goal. You score the lower of the two goals. With a caveat, we'll get to the caveat later, we score the lower of the two goals effectively means if I sit there and I spend the entire time structuring and placing the board such that I go ahead and have a ton of points on the board, I have 15 points for my goal, well, if this goal scores 2 points, then my score is 2 points. +1, +1. The way it works is whoever has scored more on their goal does get 1 more point. So if I scored 14 and you scored 12, then we both get 12, but I get +1 for being higher, so I get 13 points for that. That's the way it operates. So it gives you a tiny incentive for yours being better, but ultimately you want to work on both your colors scoring as optimally as possible. This is a good time to note that this is actually illegally the way I place these out. We won't talk about that. You have to kind of place a tile from the center or touching a tile from the center, so that would have been illegal over there. But these are still illegal over here. Now we go. There we go. Now it's legal, but scoring us less points. Now it's all legal. Anyways, that's the way you're trying to score for your colors. There's a few other ways you score points. There's a few other tokens you can get, things you can do that'll get you extra points. But the core points you're going to get in the game are looking at the 2 goals you score, looking at the matching goals you have with other players, scoring the lesser for those, and adding a point on top of it. And again, there's a few other ways you'll add points on top of things, but that is how you play the game. Which means I want to be paying attention for the fact that somebody else at the table is scoring a blue pattern. Someone else at the table has a blue goal, and I know that there's a blue card in play, but I don't know which one it is. And so I want to start paying attention to what they do as they grab various tokens and as they put them out on the board. Maybe they go ahead and put a token over here like so, and they follow it up with a token over here like so, and then they go ahead and pop this one over here. And right about now, I'm sitting here wondering, you know what, they actually have these 2 over here like this, and there is one of the goal cards is going to reward you for mirrored diagonals, mirrored triangles on the same orientation. So if they go ahead and do that over there, and then they pop down another one over here a little bit later, and they follow that up with, one that goes over here, I'm really starting to pay attention to the fact that they seem to be going that way. But I know that I'm trying to score for having in 2 sectors. So that means maybe I try to match what they're doing, but I throw this down over here. That'll still score me a point for my sector. I lose this one, but I'm helping balance their goals. As you place, as you're mindful of the possible opportunities, and there aren't so many, there's like, I think 6 from each side, there's around 10 to 12 total goals possible. But that means as you place things down in the game, you're paying attention for what is an optimal placement. Somebody at the table wants to get their blue goal satisfied. Somebody is placing them down, and I already know one of the goals that's out of play because it's mine, but the other goals in play, I need to pay attention to what they're doing and try to find out the pattern that matches what they're doing so that I can mirror and help them out. That's half the game. The other half of the game is looking at the other players. Hey, look at that. There's a whole bunch of yellow in this orientation, and players are starting to place these tiles. I mean, I'm actually yellow, so let's ignore that. Let's look at the red over here. I've been focusing on the wrong colors because I've been trying to show you how to play the game. But if we go ahead and we pop this one down over here like so, and then we go ahead and we have another one down. Actually, that's actually, a better orientation is? Here we go. If I go ahead and do it like this, facing that way, and I go ahead and I pop another one facing there, maybe someone's trying to slowly but surely get their green tiles because there is a pattern that rewards you for having 2 pointed ones in sets over there facing the same direction, again facing the same orientation. And so I start to notice that the greens are popping up in a way that makes me think that maybe one of the goals of the table is green. And so at that point I start placing both to fulfill my own goals, but also to get in the way of other players at the same time, to try to obfuscate their plans, not obfuscate, but get in the way of their plans while fulfilling my own goals. But that's basically how you play Founders. That's most of it. There's player abilities we haven't talked about. There's faction abilities. There's other tiles over here in the game where as you place tiles down on certain things, you're going to go ahead and get. There's a few different things you can get. There's points over here where if you get a point, you're going to put out one of your goals and a matching player's goal over there. That'll be worth extra points as well. But then there's also points over here, and that helps you to know who your player is, because if you place it on the one that's matching your color, again, that helps you get extra point for that color. You're going to have these over here that help you change the color of something. So if I'm going for that green pattern over here, dropping this down over here is a great way to score extra points. Whenever you land on one of these, you'll get that. Whenever you land on this, you'll get the points. And then when you land on, it's somewhere here, I may have covered them all up over here. When you land on one of the other symbols that I can't find, but somewhere, you're going to go ahead and get these over here. And these will go directly onto single spots on the board like so, although that will actually create a little fountain in there because you have these closed off areas that creates fountains where you put a cube that indicates that it's that color fountain. But that's basically how you play through Founders. On your turn, you're going to take a tile from someone else. You're going to place that tile on the board, respecting the board placement rules, which require adjacency to the center or to other tiles. You'll use your player abilities if they are relevant or helpful. You'll get various rewards if you covered certain spots on the board, and you're trying to do all this while trying to score your own goals and trying to be mindful of how it helps your partner and gets in in the way of others, and to do that, you need to have figured out who your partner is and who the others are while holding all this information in your head, being uncertain who's who until the end of the game. When the end of the game comes, players are going to go ahead and reveal their goals. You're going to go ahead and see who did what in the game and exactly how they helped. Look at that. Purple over here wanted those sets of, paired up tiles. Yellow over here did want those mirrored things over here. They wanted those mirrored. Blue wants the adjacency. Purple over here wants to have all tiles in a single sector around 3 sectors around the board. Maybe this one works-ish, maybe. Don't know exactly. Yellow over here wants spiraling out from the center in each direction. It's another spot over here. And then we have blue who wants mirrored opposite edges. You're going to pair up each faction's score, give each faction the lowest score for that, give an extra point to each person, and then sum your 2 lowest points. So again, if you got 10 over here and 8 over here for your faction, your score would be 18 points, and every player does that for their faction. That is how you play Founders from This Way Games. It is a little bit... It's both incredibly easy as far as the core rules. The core rules are very, very simple. It is a little bit more in terms of understanding how to actually play the game. But with that, let's go ahead and dive into the review, starting off with ease of play, which ease of play, going to what I just said, the rulebook is fairly straightforward. The rules themselves are not overly complicated. The game itself has it's a very rules-like game. It's just take a tile, place it on the board, a few rules about adjacency, a few rules about what adjacency means or how you place tiles, and then what connected tiles are. You need to know those terminologies, connected versus adjacent versus all that. A few rules about the things you can get extra, various spots so you can place things onto other tiles. Again, very, very rules-light as far as the game goes. Strategically, it kind of requires almost like playing through half a game and scoring before you fully understand. You're like, oh, okay, so I get points for this, and oh, the lower of our... I can't just work on mine. Oh, I thought like we both like helped each other, but like to realize fully and to understand the consequence of the fact that if your partner is not scoring well, you are not scoring well, that is a big part of the game. It's important to figure out who the other players are. It's more important to figure out who your partner is than each of your colors so you can help guide them along what they're doing and match and mirror what they are doing. As far as what I like, don't like, I can see others not liking. To start off with, the game state is... The way this game operates almost inherently pushes to replay the game as much as possible, to give you that replayability, to give that incentive of, okay, I just played it, but now let's try playing it again. There's going to be entirely different goals in play. The way those goals are going to pair up, the way I'm going to dive into the next game to see, the use of my player power, all those things are going to give you the determination or the goal to try to play this game as much as you possibly can. This is a game that definitely rewards repeated plays for better, but also for worse. And you're not just working to figure out who's against you in this game. Generally in strategic deduction games, which I've played a few, we'll talk more about in the recommendations, but that concept of strategic deduction, where deduction is not essential. This is not a hidden role game. You don't have to figure out who the other players are. But it's strategic deduction because it helps you if you do. That term, I believe that term was actually coined by IV Studios when they had their game Veiled Fate. But that idea that it is not necessarily inherent deduction necessary, but it helps you play the game. It helps you score better if you can figure out what's happening at the table. Usually in those games, you're trying to figure out your opponent. In this game, you're trying to figure out your partner. You're trying to figure out your other player at the table so you can help them out. That to me is a lot more, there's a lot more charm in that aspect of the game than in just figuring out who's in your way. I find often in strategic deduction games, one of the big weaknesses is the fact that if you obfuscate what you're doing too much, you will lose. Sure, no one will know who you are, but you'll lose. So you almost want to play a bit more obviously. This game, the very nature of the board, the very nature of the way the board sets up, this one more so than other games in the genre, this game gives you the opportunity to play in a way that helps you while also lending itself to multiple interpretations of your play. I find, again, strategic deduction as a genre, I find very often you have to choose between doing the thing that's good for you or trying to be a little more hidden, and usually just being obvious is better for you in those games. Like, sure, there'll be some uncertainty, but if you just like sit there and be like, ooh, you'll never figure it out in red, that's because you're not playing to help red. That's why I don't know you're red. And so you have that tornness in those games. In this game, there's more room for that potential. There's more room for you to sit there and place a piece that helps you achieve your goals while also leaving open interpretation to 4 other things that could be going on. And if you continue with that theme, you can really drive forward a false presentation while being true to the way that you're going to score points, while being mindful that you also have a partner at the table. One of the things you have in common with your partner that other players don't necessarily know about is if I have blue, somebody else, my partner, knows that blue is in play. Versus the other colors, I'm guessing. When you sit there and put down a tile, I'm like, ooh, are you yellow? Are you red? Are you green? I don't even know. That could help for 3 different things. Your partner has an easier time finding you than the other players because they know blue is in play. They only have to look for the other blue patterns. It makes that job easier. And so the game really works well as far as that kind of concept of what's going on here. Additionally, there's going to be cascading placements. As you place things down in the game, you're going to get little extra bonuses, plus the player powers. That all gives a nice extra spin to a game design that's already working pretty decently as is. As far as what I can see, as far as what I don't like in the game, first of all, and this is very selective to your group, but you do get punished for having a partner who's not picking up on things, or not playing well for that matter. This is a game where you are playing with a partner. You're not winning with your partner, you're winning alone, but you are playing with a partner. And in this game, if you sit there and score 9 points with your card and your partner only managed to score 3, that's just going to be a frustrating experience. Now, I haven't had a discrepancy that bad, at least not yet, so it's more about the fact that there is a discrepancy and the potential for there to be a bad discrepancy, but if your partner does not do well, you simply are not going to do well. There's nothing you can do about it. You can play the best game possible, but if your partner just tanked your color, not necessarily intentionally, but if they tanked your color, there's only so much you can do. You can be frustrated. That's what you can do. You can play again. The game's not that long, but there's nothing you can do to solve for that. So this is a team game that is not actually a team game and will punish you accordingly for it. I'll say the scoring cards are not necessarily that intuitive. This is a game where you definitely want a player aid. I don't know, again, prototypes, I don't know if they'll have. Right now I have a rulebook, no player aid, but I think you do want a player aid for each of the scoring cards. Some are more intuitive than others, but definitely all of them can benefit from having something you can look at, and you can't even ask someone for the rules all the time because some of them are more obvious than others. If I ask you to look at the rules to see my color and how it works, it's already more obvious that I don't have certain patterns that are more intuitive, and so that's already, you want a good player aid for the game. It's not the end of the world, but it does, again, it goes back to this game will play a lot better on your second play than on your first play. This is definitely a game as well, going into that same tune, this is definitely a game that rewards players who know it better. For sure that first play is just a learning game. Consider that first play very much a learning game because seeing the patterns, it might sit there and like, there's a card, for instance, there's a scoring card that rewards you for everything along a broken diagonal. So like purple over here could be trying to score for that broken diagonal, or it could be trying to score for around the 3 things. And you don't necessarily know how that plays out, but the better you know the possible cards at the table, the better that's going to be. And so I think that this is a game that could benefit from having a ton of possible scoring cards to give you more variability, but you don't want to introduce those all at once. Even the way it is right now, the 11 or so possibilities of how things score can be overwhelming to someone who's diving into this for the first time, just trying to figure out the strategy. And so a player who's played this 3 or 4 times will be at such a huge advantage in terms of figuring out their partner and the other players compared to someone who's new to the table. So this game definitely has a large advantage to players who have played it before. All games will have an advantage. I find Founders has a slightly larger advantage because of the nature of the game. As far as things I can see others not liking, first of all, this game has hidden information in general. If you don't like hidden information games, this might be frustrating to you. And then secondly, it is very, very abstract. I assume there's a theme of what's going on in the districts and the cities and the things. I assume there's something here. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't really. It feels like you're placing tiles down the board to score points. That doesn't bother me. I don't mind abstract games. But if you want things to drop more theme, I don't feel like their previous game, Ice, was also an abstract strategy game, but felt very thematic in terms of the way you were digging down into the layers of the ice to get more things. This one, I'm sure there's a theme, but on the other hand, contrasted with Ice, I don't feel the theme. I just feel like I'm placing down tiles and trying to optimize my score. As far as final thoughts on Founders, I really like the game while being a drop torn on how often this will get tabled. That's my biggest challenge. Instinctively, when I was going through the rating of this one, we'll talk about my number soon, but we'll talk about the number now. When I was going through the rating, this is one of those games, and I've had this before, I'll have it again, where I'm torn between that 3.5 and that 4 rating. Because I really like the game. Even just now talking about the game, I'm like, I like the game. I've played this game. I've enjoyed this game. It is fun to go into it. But it's also a game that's a little bit harder to table. It's a game that there is that advantage that's going to make it so that when you're playing with somebody new for the first time, I kind of have to just like, it's a teaching game. I'm not going to try to win because I'll know it better. There is that first player advantage. And so combined with the fact that your partner mattering to you is a big deal in the game, because at the end of the day, their score, how well they score, how poorly they score is going to be the thing that holds you back. There are a bunch of small things that kind of get in the way of Ice for me. For me, I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5 for right now, with the possibility of it growing. I mean, all ratings I give have the possibility of going up, down, I don't know. But this one, I think it possibly can go up. I enjoy the game. I don't know how often it will or won't hit the table. It is To me, it's the game that has done strategic deduction best from any game I've played with that mechanic. And speaking of which, we're going to kind of hodgepodge recommendations into final thoughts here, but recommendations-wise, if you're looking for other games in the genre, two that are going to come to mind are Veiled Fate from Ivy Games, and Clans, which is a very hard-to-get out-of-print game, but it is a fun little system. Both of those are games that I've enjoyed as well, and I find both of them have that problem I talked about, that problem where if you're trying to be subtle, you're probably going to lose, and so the hidden element feels like it's not fully in complement with the game. Veiled Fate, interestingly enough, Veiled Fate has a team mode at higher player counts, at 6, at 7 players. It has a team mode where you have a partner, and that is my favorite way to play Veiled Fate. And that is every game that you play at Founders. Every game you play at Founders has that partner aspect. The combination of the way you place the tiles, the combination of having that partner who's on your team and not just against you, means that it does strategic deduction, for me, better than any game in the genre. But it still has things that make it, for me, not a game that I'm 100% certain how excited I am, how often I'll hit the table. And so for right now, I am settling on that 3.5 right now. It is one that I was torn between the 3.5 and the 4. I'm pushing to a 3.5, and we'll see over time whether it continues to grow or not. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you found this review helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.